Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. It's great to have all of you here. I'm excited to talk about some nutrition and hopefully answer some questions. I know Casey said he's doing the Q&A at the very end, but please don't hesitate. If you have questions, especially about what I'm talking through, ask those as we go along. Just raise your hand. We'll get you up and answer those questions as we go. All right, now, I put this quote up before starting because I want to read it out to you. This really, when I read this, this changed my whole philosophy on nutrition and the way I approached food and what I thought, about what I ate. It's just eat meat and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. Keep intake levels that support exercise and not body fat. That's by Coach Glassman, CEO and founder of CrossFit. Really, I could just tell you that, and then I could walk off, and then that's all you really need. That's it. What we're going to do is spend the next half hour kind of unpacking those pieces, talking about what does that actually mean in your day-to-day life. I mean, it took me the better part of, 7 years to still fully kind of understand what that looks like on a day-to-day basis and the best systems and the best ways to implement that strategy. Because it sounds great, right? You're eating food, you're only eating enough to support yourself and not get fat. It's awesome. But what does that look like from you here to everyday life, to lunch at work, to in the kitchen, to cooking dinner for your kids? What does that actually look like? What does that mean? What we're going to talk about first, before we can really get into the day-to-day, is we have to go through some basic science when it comes to nutrition. So you think it's like your nutrition 101, just some basic terminology that I feel is very helpful for everyone to kind of get on board with and get familiar with. You guys ready for that? Yeah. So I promise, I hope you don't fall asleep, but I promise it will be educational. Might not be the most entertaining part of the night, but you should walk away learning at least one new thing. Now, nutrition really breaks down in the nutrition sciences into macronutrients and micronutrients. That's what we're talking about when we look at nutrition, right? So when we talk about macronutrients, when we look at food groups, they can be broken down into these three big categories. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with those. What am I working with here?
Protein, fats, carbs.
Proteins, fats, and carbs, absolutely. Is the blue dark enough for you guys to see? Yeah. Yes? Now, when we look at proteins, that's kind of the more sciencey term for that. It's synonymous with amino acids. When we look at carbs, that's going to be synonymous if you ever see the word glucose or glycogen. And then when you look at fats, that's also synonymous with lipids. So just know that those are the more sciencey ways of saying those basic macronutrient terms as we go through. Now, when we're looking at proteins, guys, that's the body's structural component. You need that. That's what your body builds muscle out of, is what it builds your body out of. Carbohydrates and fats are both utilized for energy sources. So the easiest analogy I have, and of course working with my wife in the kids program, the analogy we like to use is if you're a race car, your body's a race car, you can look at protein as the car parts. You can look at carbohydrates as like a racing fuel, and you can look at fats as like your 87 unleaded, just getting around town kind of fuel. Right? It's a very simple analogy, but a good way to think about how you need kind of all three if you're an athlete. You need that racing fuel. Right? If you're not so much an athlete, then maybe you don't need as much racing fuel. You start to put these things together. Now, it's not as simple as just macronutrients. We also have to talk about micronutrients. And those are just your vitamins and minerals, stuff that you can't make on your own. You have to eat them to get what you need to survive. Now that's kind of the basic as far as the more sciencey ways of putting nutrition and how we break down food. But what we need to talk about now is calories. Now calorie is just a unit of measurement for energy. But not all calories are equal. And I want to unpack that statement a little bit, because I know you've probably heard that before. You're like, well, what do you mean not all calories? A calorie, right? If it's 1 calorie, it's 100 calories, it's 100 calories of energy. But not all calories are created equal because of the hormonal effect that food has on your body. So just counting calories is not good enough. It doesn't give you the whole picture. Sure, it can give you just a glimpse of the puzzle, but it doesn't let you see the whole picture. What we have to look at is how food, when we eat it, affects our body on a hormonal level. there's a couple hormones you need to be aware of. All right? And you guys want to kick on the fans and I can talk louder?
Yes, please.
Yeah. You mind kicking the fans on? I'll talk over them. If you can't hear me, just let me know. Yeah. All right, so hopefully that cools it down just a little bit. But we were talking about hormones and how different calories or different foods affect your body in a hormonal level, in a different way. We gotta look at a few specific ones. Let's start with one you probably all heard of before in cortisol. You've heard of cortisol before. It's, very loosely your stress hormone, right? It's made in the adrenal cortex. That's where your adrenaline comes from, your fight or flight response, right? It's kind of the opposite to that hormone, but it's very, very powerful when it comes to how your body utilizes those calories, right? If you have a little bit too much cortisol floating around, sometimes your body can channel those calories or move those calories in areas or places you don't want them to be. Right? Cortisol, we need to make sure that we have that at a balanced level before we start worrying about calories. We have to look at how are those calories going to be treated when they're put in the body. Right? We also look at leptin and ghrelin. Leptin signals fullness, ghrelin signals hunger. So you can see if those hormones were out of whack or disrupted, well, that would be a really tricky situation. You wouldn't know when you were full, you wouldn't quite know when you're hungry, you wouldn't know when to stop eating. You couldn't just listen to your body. You'd have to kind of regulate those things on your own because that situation is disrupted. We also have insulin and glucagon, and those deal with blood sugar. After you eat food, the amount of sugar that's in your blood, it deals with regulating those. So, with cortisol, we call that the stress hormone. You're stressed, you're lacking sleep, cortisol levels are going to be through the roof, they're going to be out of whack. We're talking about leptin and ghrelin. Those are kind of regulated by fat cells or adipose tissue. That's another fancy word for fat cells. Right? And we can start to see that if we have an excess of fat cells here, an excess where maybe that signal from full to hungry is a little bit disrupted, and we're overstressed and not sleeping enough, and we're not regulating our blood sugar properly, it can create this downward cycle. Where no matter what you eat, no matter how much you eat, no matter what you do, you're never going to quite get out of that. You're just going to be stuck in this rut, going down and down and down, because you never address the problem of actually getting the hormones under control and not letting them run away with the different foods you're eating. All right? The best example of this, and the one we're really going to focus on, is this relationship right up here between insulin and glucagon. It's the simplest way to kind of express this relationship. But when you eat food, and typically for insulin and glucagon, that's going to be carbohydrates. That'll be kind of what plays the most into that relationship. You have an excess of sugar in the blood, or glucose in the blood. Insulin comes along and it takes it out and it stores it into cells. It stores the energy. It's like, hey, you're not using this energy, let's store this energy. Glucagon then comes along as the antagonist to it and then takes the energy out of the cells when you need it. Right? And does anyone know anyone who's diabetic? Right? You know, that's a very important relationship that they need to maintain. Right? If your blood sugar goes too high, goes too low, you get the crash. You know, give them some juice now. Why do they want juice? Quick sugar, get them back up, prop up those levels. Okay? These hormonal relationships are the reason why a calorie is not a calorie. That's why. And the way that Americans have been eating points towards eating too much food in general. It's stated that Americans are eating roughly 700 more calories on a daily basis than they did in the 1950s. And that's, you could do that, it's supersizing meals or, whatever, but portion sizes are just bigger. A cup is no longer a cup. A cup was 8 ounces in the 50s, now it's 12 ounces. It's your basic, it's just portion sizes, everything's getting a little bit bigger. So we're eating too much food, but we're also eating too much refined carbohydrates. That's the foods that are typically easy to overeat. Think about the last time you got away from something I gotta unbutton my pants after that one. What was that food you're eating? I want to wager a guess it wasn't a salad. I'm just gonna put that out there. I'd probably put money down on that one. You're like, oh, I just had too much salad tonight. And it's back away from the old salad buffet. No. It's those foods that are easy to eat, those refined carbohydrates, highly processed. Things that are also lacking in those micronutrients. But you can just eat them and eat them and eat them. And let's eat too much. And let's have insulin really working overtime. Right? Insulin's trying to take all that sugar and try to put it somewhere. Where does it put it? Well, it puts it in fat cells. Once it fills up the muscle, the liver, and the amount that's floating in the blood, it's got to go somewhere. So it goes into fat cells or adipose tissue. And then that disrupts this relationship here. So you never really know, am I full? I don't know, I don't feel full. That signal's not getting there because of that disruption. So it begins that downward spiral. So what do we have to do? We have to eat in a way that allows us to avoid having this relationship disrupted. That's what we have to do. Eat a balanced approach. Now, when I was in school and I was studying nutrition, it was preached to me, like as an athlete, I needed 70% carbohydrate, 20% protein, 10% fat. When you see that percentage right there, that's already, what's that 20? Oh my gosh. They're telling me to eat in a way that's going to mess with my hormone levels. And that's what we've seen over the years in this country. Look at the old US dietary guidelines that are thankfully now changed, but look at those as they progress through the years. It's not like we didn't do what they told us to do. We did. We put breads and grains at the base. We put fruits and veggies there. We put all the carbohydrates down as the base of the pyramid and kind of negated the other two macronutrient groups. And look where it's gotten this country as far as health is concerned. It's estimated that by the year 2050, 1 in 3 Americans will have type 2 diabetes. Means look left, look right, someone's going to be diabetic. And it's a condition that you have given yourself because of the way you've been eating. That woke me up a little bit. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So how do we avoid that? I think Coach Glassman said it best. Eat meat and veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. When he says no sugar, he means no refined sugar, no added sugar. Obviously fruits, veggies will be reduced down to sugars, right? But no added sugars. Now, this condition right here that I just described to you, where kind of that relationship's out of whack and everything's kind of going down a downward spiral, that's what we call hyperinsulinemia. It's a fancy term for basically like you're resistant to your own insulin. Meaning your insulin, you have to keep producing more and more and more to get the same job done. It's kind of like when, you guys ever get in an elevator next to someone that's wearing way too much perfume or cologne? And you're like, oh, that is strong. But then by like the 4th floor, you don't even really notice it anymore, because you've kind of gotten used to it. It's the same way in a rough sense, that all that insulin floating around, your body's just kind of used to it being there, so it needs more, it needs more, it needs more, and it begins this dysfunctional relationship. Right? So that condition is also the precursor to what's known as the deadly quartet. What we call hyperinsulinemia, or that's what leads to hypertriglyceridemia, too much fat in the blood, upper body obesity around the vital organs, not the kind you want, hypertension, high blood pressure, and of course adult onset diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which now is becoming known as child onset diabetes, which is truly heartbreaking. So we have to, once again, control this relationship here before we can start talking about a calorie as a calorie. If that's out of whack, that's not true. So, we're talking about this quote now, how this quote basically encapsulates is what I mean to say, in my opinion, the best dietary approach. Any diet's going to be founded on kind of 3 pillars. Those 3 pillars are going to be quality of food, quantity of food, and the timing, or like when you eat that food, right? So, we're going to start with the quality side of things, quality food. But what do we mean when we say quality food? So it's like, hey, I eat healthy. It's cool, I eat healthy. What does that mean? What do you mean you eat healthy? Well, it's right there. Meat, veggies, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. That's it. What do we notice about the foods in that list? What do you notice? Give me some characteristics of those foods. Real. They're real foods. Yeah. They don't come in a prepackaged box. What else?
Not processed.
Not processed. Thank you. Yeah, not processed. There's no nutrition label on them. It's just a banana. You don't need a label that says banana. That's it. Right? It's just some meat in the butcher shop. You don't need a label on it that says meat. Right? It's just meat. And it's just steak or whatever. What else? Where might you find some of those foods in the grocery store? Yeah, Tracy's like, yeah, it's all. Yeah, I like to say avoid the inner aisle, the inner frozen aisles of death. Don't go down those aisles. Avoid those. Stick to the outside, right? That's where you're going to find those things that perish. These are perishable foods. These are foods that you can't put on the shelf, and they're good for 2 years. This is stuff you got to go to the grocery store every week to get a new batch of, because it's going to go bad, right? Side note, what do you think about that stuff that's good for 2 years? You put it on the shelf and you put it in your body's going to magically do something. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that always grosses me out. Quality food, that's what we're talking about, that list. Real, natural, healthy, unprocessed foods. We also notice they're high in those micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, the stuff we're looking for. Now I do want to note, this is where you start. When you're trying to fix this problem, or you're just trying to eat a little bit healthier of a way, this is where you start. You start by eating quality foods first. That's the first thing you got to get under control. What kind of foods am I choosing to eat on a daily basis? Those kinds of foods. Now, I also wanted to say that if you have children, please stop there. Don't continue on to trying to control these pieces. For kids, just help them with eating quality foods. Just help them understand what are real natural foods. Don't limit them on how much they're eating. Don't limit them on, unless you're in some extreme cases. Just try to keep that natural, healthy relationship with food, where food is a vital resource that we want to eat. But, absolutely educate them on good quality foods as they go through. In other words, you shouldn't be like weighing out your child's amount of chicken. Right? Just let them eat. They're growing. We don't want to produce any negative connotations between them and food that can manifest into something worse later on in life. Now, side note aside, we can see that quote already starts to build in a little bit of the quantity side of things. Right? It starts to build in a little bit of balance. Right? We can see meat and veggies. What kind of macronutrients are we working with right there? Meat and veggies. What's meat? If you had to give meat one, yeah, it's a protein. What about veggies? Carbohydrate, absolutely. Is it a massive amount of carbohydrate? No, you can't really eat a whole lot of. Yeah, I tell my wife all the time, I dare you to overeat on broccoli. I dare you. So what she did last night, she mixed it with a whole bunch of bacon, of course. But meat and veggies. Now, nuts and seeds, what macronutrient food group is that? Fat, and a lot of fat. A little bit of that goes a long way. So we already see all three groups represented. Then we see some fruit, okay, just a little bit, little starch, those are both carbohydrates, and no sugar. So we start to see, hey, less starch than you have fruit, less fruit than you have veggies. That's a great place to start. It's a great way to begin eating for some quality pieces or some quality food choices. Now, you might also notice on that list, it's very similar to a Paleolithic approach or paleo diet. Anyone familiar with that or has heard of that in the media or the news? Yeah, just to be clear, it's not, when Coach Glass is saying, go eat paleo, right? It's just, very common because paleo wants whole natural foods. However, they tend to eliminate grains, dairy, and legumes, which is like beans, peanuts, actually. And I think the reason for that is if, raise your hand if you know anyone that's lactose intolerant. Keep your hand up. Raise your hand if you know anyone that is allergic to peanuts. Cool. You got 2 hands up. Raise your hand if you know anyone that is celiac or gluten intolerant. And so look around. You can see at least 3/4 of everyone's hands have been up at some point in this. And there's a reason. It's the most common allergens when it comes to foods. So I recommend try eliminating some of those food groups out of your diet and see how you feel. Try eliminating for about 3 weeks. Reintroduce those food groups one at a time and see if you make the connection that I had to make when I was like, every time I have dairy, I get super stuffy. This sucks. Man. And I fought it for a long time. Stop drinking milk, and then I go out with my wife, we do date night, we have a little Cold Stone ice cream, so good. Wake up the next morning, nah, I just must be coming down with something. It's gotta be, and next time, and then I'm a little bit stuffy, and I'm like, no, it can't be the ice cream. I gotta be sick, or we left the window open last night, something. It's the ice cream. I hate to break it to you. But that's this reaction that my body has when I overdo it on the dairy or the lactose side of things. You have to make those connections for yourself. You have to start looking at what you're putting in and how it makes you feel on the output side of things. You just have to do it. And the only way you're going to figure that out is for you to actually try it. I can't tell you if dairy is going to make you feel terrible or if gluten's a bad food group for you. Who knows? You might eat a piece of toast and feel great. You might be able to just crush it, but you don't know that unless you try. So try taking out. See if you feel better. Or if that chronic stuffy nose, that sore throat, or whatever those things, they might go away. Those inflammatory responses might die down. Who knows? Reintroduce it. If you feel even better, good for you. Awesome. But if you don't, be honest with yourself and make that connection. And that, you know what? I can't have that particular piece. Now, on the side, sometimes a cold stone's worth it. Sometimes you do it and it's totally worth it, but at least I know what I'm doing to my own body when I do that. At least I've made that connection, and it's not just, I wonder why that's happening, right? So, we're eating quality foods. We start to figure out the foods that work best for us. That's where we start. But now it's time to start looking at the quantity side of this. Yes, quantity does matter. Okay, I can't just eat 3 pounds of meat, a plate full of veggies, and a pound of nuts every day and expect to get where I want to go on my own fitness journey. Right? I'm just not going to get where I want to go. My body composition is not going to be what I want it to be. I'm not going to get towards my particular goals. That's just a lot of food. Right? So we have to start looking at measuring these things out. The first thing I want you to do is after you start working at food quality and you start locking that in, just use basic hand sizes. Everyone hold out your flat hand for me. Good. This is the amount of protein that you should be having at every meal. Okay? If it's eggs, it's how many eggs you can hold in one hand. It's a basic place to start, right there. Boom. It's roughly 3 to 4 ounces, depending on the size of the hand. Okay? Of course, after you cook it, put it on your plate. Oh, it's that big of a steak. You should probably cut it in half. Right? That's where you start. Now, for your starches like potatoes, white rice, all that kind of stuff, think the size of a baseball or your fist. Boom. That's a good place to start right there. That's it. Right? And then for added fats like avocados, nut butters, any kind of stuff, just size of your thumb. Right there. That's about 1 tablespoon, I should say. Right there. So protein, carb, fat. Veggies are a free food. Eat as much veg as you want. Once again, just like I dare you, overeat on veggies. I dare you. Prove me wrong. Okay? Eat as much of those as you want. Okay? And those I'm talking leafy green veggies, colorful veggies, the good stuff. Okay? Now, if you're looking to get a little bit more precise with that, because that's what's needed, if you want to continue to make progress with your dietary habits, you have to start getting a little bit more accurate, a little more precise than just hand portions. This is going to get you started. It's going to get you in the habit of beginning to make that change or beginning to create that habit of measuring out how much food you're eating. I highly suggest you begin by just tracking one macronutrient food group first. Just start by tracking the amount of protein you have. Just start there. Very easy progression up. And there you just actually measure out how much protein you're eating, how much protein you're having. A great place to start to know how much protein you need to be having. It's really easy. Three-quarters of your body weight, get that many grams of protein per day. Pretty basic place to start. Once again, a very approximate figure to get you on the right track, to getting enough protein in and starting to balance that out. What this also does is helps to limit the amount of those other foods you're eating. You can only eat so much in a day. And a lot of these quality foods will help limit the amount of food you feel like you need to eat. You'll start bringing that back in. But once again, not where we stop, just a nice step in the right direction. The system that I found easiest for myself to get the most accuracy and the most precision is by using the zone block system. And And this is how we begin to then measure all 3 macronutrient food groups, right? How much protein, how much carbs, and how much fat we have in each day. And we get really precise and really accurate with what we're eating. Okay. Question?
So, do you pick the amount of protein the weight that you want to be, or the weight that you are?
Which weight you are right now. Yeah. With that, that's for this piece right here. Now, let's get into this, and that gets a little bit more refined, right? Because once again, that's just one step up from hand portion sizes, which is very basic. It's a good way to eyeball it. If you're on the road, traveling, that kind of deal, hey, yeah, that's about right. But that's not going to get you where you want to go in the long run. You're going to eventually hit a plateau there. It's going to stall you out, right? You have to do a little bit more precision, a little bit more accuracy. You have to get a little bit more into it. Now, this zone block system here, it's very easy once you learn it. It's like kind of learning the metric system. Remember the metric system, we're in America, so it's like, oh, I don't know about metrics, but metrics is really easy. It's all multiples of 10. That's easy, like 10, 10, 10, 10, right? So it's the same thing here. Once you learn it, super simple, super simple. For the zone, once again, it's how we measure all 3 macronutrient food groups. I also highly recommend, guys, you take a food and assign it 1 macronutrient group. So if you were to look at an apple, that would be a carbohydrate. All you would count is carbohydrates. Yes, there's a minuscule amount of protein in the apple. Don't worry about it. You're going to go crazy trying to count every last little calorie and gram and everything else. You're going to go nuts. Okay? Yeah, some nuts have protein in them. Don't worry about it. Just count the fat. Okay? All those hidden pieces will actually help to fill out your diet and make sure you're eating enough food and not too little. Everyone cool with that? Yeah, so it's an easy trick to help you get there. CrossFit Journal 21, where Coach Glassman read the book and summarized it in like 3 pages. He was like, here's the book in 3 pages, here's what you need to know, go. That's it. All you do is just Google that, CrossFit Journal 21, it brings you up, boom, there it is. It's got meal plans attached to it, it's awesome. It is an amazing resource for working on getting this quantity piece locked in. But it's very simple, in that every meal, you need to have all 3 macronutrient groups represented. So 1 block has protein, carbohydrates, and fat. All the precision's measured out in that. You would just look at, okay, I need 1 block of protein, that's 1 ounce of chicken. It's got charts for that. You would just start using that to help you find where you need to be. A great place to start with that if you're looking at, okay, well then, how many blocks do I need to have in a day? Because that tells me how much food I get to have. Just take your body weight and divide by 10. I'm 185 pounds. I need 18 and a half blocks a day, so I'm going to be generous and round that up to 19, because I'm a hungry boy. So I want 19 blocks a day. That's where I start. That's it. Boom, and then I start. All you do is look in the back side of the article. It'll have a 4-block sample meal. Yeah, I'm going to use that. That's 4 of my blocks right there. Bam. I'm just going to piece that together throughout the day. I do 4 4-block meals and 1 3-block meal. Guess what? That's 19. And that's actually how I eat. I have eaten for the last 5 years. Using that system that way. Now some days, if I'm really active, yeah, I bump it up to maybe 22 blocks. Or some days, if I'm not being so active, I lower it down to 17 blocks. Once again, looking at the quantity based on what I'm doing. However, I got my baseline, I know where I'm going with it. Right? So for starting to weigh and measure your food, after you lock this down, start with just measuring your protein. Just start there. Build that habit. Start to look at that. Then when you're ready to bump up from, okay, I got protein locked in, I know how to measure my protein, I'm going to learn the zone system, and just that's going to help me measure all 3 macronutrient groups and become really precise with how much food I'm actually eating. Now if you try the zone system and you're like, it just doesn't work for me, please make sure you ask one of us coaches first. We can walk you through it in a much more detailed way before you just abandon it. But if you're like, you know what, I just don't like the metric system, coach, I'm not going to do it, I'm American, I don't like that. Right? Then fine. Fine, just measure it. I don't care, just weigh it and measure it. Just know how much you're eating. So if I ask you the question, how much protein did you have for breakfast this morning? You're not going to look at me with a blank stare, you're going to be able to accurately tell me, well, I had 4 eggs, so that's 4 blocks, so that'd be 28 grams of protein, coach. Good. That's where you need to be. You don't need to get there right now, but that's where you need to be if you're really trying to take control of what you're eating and how you're eating. Okay? Now when it comes to food timing, that's just basically you need to find what works with your schedule. A great approach is just as this quote recommends, just eat when you're hungry. Right? Just eat when you're hungry. When you're hungry, eat some food. When you're not hungry, don't eat. Right? Same thing when you need to drink water. When you feel like you're thirsty, drink some water. Don't force it. It's a bad idea. You can start to play around with that a little bit. I don't want to get into it too much tonight, but you can start to play around with it a little bit. Once you've gotten down the type of food you're eating and how much food you're eating, you can start to mess around with, okay, I'm going to save some of that towards the back end of the day. I'm going to eat a lighter breakfast, lighter lunch, heavy dinner, whatever. But you can't make that decision until you know what you're eating and how much you're eating. Everyone follow me on that? You can't delineate where it goes in the day if you don't know how much it is. So we go in this order. Everyone cool with that? All right, so I want to leave you guys with just my list of 5. These are the 5 steps where if you walk away from this tonight, the 5 steps where how I go from not even knowing what nutrition is or what I'm eating to actually taking control of how I'm eating and what I'm eating. It starts with, you guessed it, food quality. Starts with eat quality foods, and I'll put this actually right over here. Eat quality foods, right? You gotta start there. You gotta start looking at, and that right there, guys, that might take you 6 months. Wherever you're at right now. It might look like, how many times are you eating fast food a week? 5? Let's knock it down to 3. Then let's knock it down to 1. Then let's knock it down to 0. How many times have you eaten something green this week? Oh, you haven't eaten anything green. Let's try eating something green twice this week. 2 nights, have something green. Then 3 nights, then 4, and slowly add these in. We're changing habits. You don't go from 0 to 60. That's why I'm giving you all this in a stepwise fashion. You have to work slowly. You have to work in a way that it'll stick. And you do that by making small incremental changes that over time create the large changes. Just like when people lose weight, they don't lose 100 pounds overnight. It's a struggle, it's pound by pound. It's the same thing here. You have to make those small incremental changes. Okay? So after we eat quality foods, back around. Do not drink your calories. Sounds pretty simple, but it won't get you no matter what your fitness goal is. It will not get you there. Drinking your calories is a recipe for disaster, especially if you're trying to lose weight. But it wreaks havoc on this relationship over here. Right? It wreaks havoc on that. If anyone heard the glycemic index, it's just a rate at which your body kind of digests foods. Right? Liquid, there's no digestion. It just goes right to your body. Right there. You drink it, boom, it hits. There's no time it takes to actually digest. So it spikes up that hormone level, messes with that relationship. Don't drink your calories. No matter if you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, gain muscle, increase bone, whatever your goal is. Don't drink your calories, right? Obviously stick to water, teas, that kind of stuff is a great place to be, okay? 3, eat. Eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty. Pretty self-explanatory, but don't force it. Okay? Don't force it. Now, if your schedule dictates it's the morning, I'm not going to be able to get the food then yeah, have a small meal. But don't force yourself to eat something that if you're not hungry. Right? Don't mess with that hormone relationship. Let that reestablish itself naturally. Right? Start learning to listen to your body and understand that, oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat something. And understand the difference between true hunger and craving. Because that's a difference. And you guys have experienced this if you eat a large meal for dinner at 6 p.m. and then at 9 p.m. you're reaching for the ice cream. You're not hungry. You're just craving something sweet. And that deals with the sugar piece. Right? But eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty. The 4th step. All 3 macros at every meal. So that means every time you eat, have all 3 macronutrient groups represented. In an ideal world, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen all the time, but it's something to strive for. It means at breakfast, know what was your protein, what was your carb, what was your fat. At dinner tonight, know what was your protein, what was your carb, what was your fat. If you look back at your plate and you're like, well, I only remember eating carbs and fats, where's your protein? Well, I only remember eating protein and carb, where's your fat source? Right? Have all 3. That right there, that balance is what's going to help you balance that relationship out. So it's going to help you to naturally regulate those things. It's going to help you begin that process of working through it. Okay? So, step 5. Commit to 1 month of weighing and measuring. That is step 5. That's the last step. Okay? You gotta start here, work your way down. But commit to 1 month of just weighing and measuring out your foods. Until you've done that, you haven't taken control of your diet and your nutrition. You're leaving too many variables. You have to have some discipline, and when you're there, weigh it out. Now, I've told you, I've been doing this for 5 years now. Weighing and measuring out. I don't weigh and measure out every meal. I don't, but I weigh and measure out as many as I can. I have the opportunity to travel a lot. No, I don't pack a food scale with me. Right? However, when I'm home, I weigh it out. When I'm not, I don't. And that's how I find my balance. So that might start with, okay, this 1 month, be super strict on it, go, and then it might turn into every other night we'll weigh it out. Every other meal we'll weigh it out. But you do that for a month, you become very, very good at eyeballing those portion sizes. More than just your hand recommendations can give you. You're very good at looking at it and be like, that's 4 ounces of meat. I know that because I've weighed it out 30 times. I know what it looks like. You're very good at eyeballing it. You can start taking more control of those portion sizes. Cool? Before I go, 1 bonus point. Live your life. Don't be afraid to dive into that pool. Sometimes the ice cream's worth it. Okay? You got kids, it's their birthday party. Have a slice of cake. Relax a little bit. Don't get the cake out of here. I'm trying to take control of my diet. No. Live your life. Enjoy your life. Okay? Everything in moderation. However, that doesn't give you license to then have a birthday every day. And you have to start working on these things. So, that's pretty much all I got for you guys tonight on like where to start. Hopefully we learned a little bit on the science side of things about how we have to have all the macronutrients there, balance out that hormonal relationship, and know that foods affect us in different ways when we eat them. And then we start by eating quality foods, eating meat, veggies, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar, no added sugar. We keep intakes levels that support exercise and not body fat. When we measure out quantity, that's what that does for us. And then we start with just eating when we're hungry. Start there, eat when you're hungry. Now, that particular piece there of no sugar, and I made a big thing about do not drink your calories. The reason is we're going to go into a breakout group right now. We're going to separate out. I'm going to hand you over to Joe, and you're going to have an opportunity to kind of look at maybe why I'm being so hard on don't drink your calories, no added sugars, none of that. We're going to see what that looks like right now.